Anatomy, nervous system. In the previous videos, we analysed the microscopic aspect of the nervous system. Now let's explore how the structures responsible for receiving information and generating appropriate responses are organised at a macroscopic level. First of all, neural axons together with their potential myelin sheath form the nerve fibre. These fibres can be categorized into afferent or sensory and efferent or motor, depending on the direction of the impulse. Afferent fibres transmit information from the peripheral nervous system to the brain, while efferent fibres transmit information in the opposite direction. On each fibre, we can find sensory receptors, which, if stimulated, start responding correctly, making this message transmission possible. These receptors take their name from the neurotransmitters involved in the process. For example, there are serotonin receptors that bind serotonin, or dopamine receptors that bind dopamine. Each receptor mediates a different answer. But wait, there's more. Indeed, while the set of axons makes up fibers, the set of nerve fibers make up nerves. These structures allow the overall impulse transmission. It basically works like muscle tissue. These nerves are categorized into spinal and cranial nerves. Spinal nerves are mixed, containing both afferent and efferent fibers, while cranial nerves typically consist of only one of these components. Mixed nerves containing both types of fibers are quite rare. And that's how we get the highest level of stratification, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, both consisting of a set of nerves. The task of the central nervous system consists of processing incoming sensory information, integrating it by coordinating all incoming synaptic impulses and generating responses. On the other hand, the peripheral nervous system transmits both afferent and efferent information through nerves. And it's precisely at this level that the actual response to specific external stimuli is generated. But how? The answer to this question is, it depends. In fact, not all the responses have the same complexity. When it comes to simpler responses, the reflex arc kicks in. This rapid response occurs almost immediately upon receiving the stimulus. The system comprises an efferent nerve fiber that directly activates an efferent neuron, facilitating swift action. It's akin to traveling along a one-way street without any intersections, a direct pathway ensuring the quickest motor response possible. For instance, when a doctor taps our knee with a reflex hammer, we experience a stereotypical motor movement beyond our control, resulting in an involuntary leg extension. However, for more intricate responses, higher centers located in the brain come into play, integrating the stimulus. These centers are tasked with converting sensations into perceptions, or more precisely, conscious sensations. The way these neurons interpret the message hinges on the type of receptors they have. This process largely defines how we interact with the outside world, both in perceiving and reacting to stimuli. The external sensory information reaches the higher centers through neuronal pathways called sensory tracts, also known as ascending tracts, as the direction of the stimulus is upwards towards the higher centers. Once the stimulus is processed, a motor response emerges from the higher centers and reaches the effector centers, typically muscles, through motor pathways known as descending tracts. In detail, we can see these sensory tracts can be divided into the pathway of somatic exteroceptive sensitivity, which collects stimuli from receptors in the epidermis, dermis, and mucous membranes near the skin. The proprioceptive pathway, which perceives the tension of the muscles and the variation of the articular joints of the articulations. A particular type of proprioceptive sensitivity is the kinesthesia, which perceives the head movements and their speed. This sensitivity is perceived by the vestibular cochlear nerve, or Scarpa's ganglion, which is placed in the inner ear. The last type of sensitivity is the visceral one, which affects the internal organs. All these stimuli are transported by the ascending tracts, then the responses are given by the descending tracts, which regulate muscle contraction. Anatomically, the central nervous system is organized into several sections. The first section is the spinal cord, which gathers most of the body's sensory stimuli. Depending on their complexity, these stimuli can either trigger reflex arcs directly or undergo processing at the brain level. In addition to its crucial afferent function, the spinal cord also plays an efferent role towards the muscles, regulating their activity through descending tracts. In terms of its structure, the spinal cord is relatively straightforward. At this stage, it's important to understand that the spinal cord comprises a central portion composed of grey matter and a surrounding peripheral area made up of white matter. Moving upward from the spinal cord, we encounter the brainstem, which serves as its natural extension. In a cordiocranial scan, the brainstem comprises three main regions: the medulla, also known as the medulla oblongata, as it directly continues from the spinal cord, the pons, and the midbrain. Similar to the spinal cord, the brainstem contains both grey and white matter. However, in this region, the grey matter is organized into clusters of neurons of varying sizes called nuclei. Some of these nuclei are responsible for receiving and transmitting nuclear signals to and from the brain, while others regulate functions such as respiratory rhythm and pulse rate. Then there's the cerebellum, situated in the posterior cranial fossa. It is interconnected with the brainstem via nerve bundles known as cerebellar peduncles. The cerebellum can be divided into three parts: two cerebellar hemispheres and a central structure called cerebellar vermis. The outer layer of the cerebellar hemispheres, known as the cerebellar cortex, comprises grey matter, while the central region consists of white matter with embedded grey matter nuclei. The cerebellum has different functions, including controlling body balance, regulating muscle tone, controlling posture, and facilitating coordination. Additionally, it receives proprioceptive and tactile information, allowing it to monitor the outcomes of bodily movements. Furthermore, the telencephalon is the most involved portion of the central nervous system and makes up for a large part of the cranial cavity. Its surface is so extended that it needs a series of folds or convolutions separated by grooves, sulci. Have you ever heard of cerebral lobes? If so, you have certainly heard of the telencephalon. These grooves in the brain delineate specific areas known as lobes, each with a distinct function. Macroscopically, we can say that the telencephalon is composed of two hemispheres, separated by a deep groove with the corpus callosum located at its base. The outermost portion of the telencephalon is composed of grey matter and is called the cortex, similar to the cerebellum. Below the cortex, white matter is found. The cerebral cortex is an immensely intricate structure, with numerous functions that are yet to be fully comprehended. It is divided into 52 distinct areas based on function. Its sensory and motor regions are the most well known, yet they occupy less than half of the cerebral cortex surface. The bulk of the cortex comprises associative areas which integrate information to facilitate the comprehension of our surroundings, decipher emotional and affective nuances, process language, foster self-awareness, and curiously, remain the least explored part of the cortex. Finally, the Diencephalon represents the last segment of the central nervous system. It's a grey matter enveloped by the Telencephalon, which is why it is not visible from the outside. The Diencephalon comprises several parts, including the thalamus, responsible for receiving sensory input from the spinal cord and brainstem and relaying it to the Telencephalon, to which it is connected. Its functions always include short-term memory, language processing, affective tone, and various behavioral activities. The metathalamus, which serves a similar function but specializes in transmitting visual and auditory information. The hypothalamus, which integrates information from the vegetative nervous system, regulating functions such as hunger, thirst, body temperature, heart rate, circadian rhythm, and activity of endocrine glands. The subthalamus, pivotal in the execution of motor patterns. The epithalamus, primarily associated with the pineal gland, an endocrine organ that secretes melatonin. It plays a crucial role in regulating circadian rhythms and mood. The peripheral nervous system serves as a link between the central nervous system and the body's periphery. It can be divided into two main parts. The somatic nervous system, which communicates with muscles, bones, joints, as well as outer areas like the skin, mucous membranes, and sensory organs. The sympathetic or autonomic nervous system, which relays signals to the innards. Unlike the somatic nervous system, which regulates sensorial components and the human muscles, the autonomic nervous system controls the activities of internal organs that function independently of our conscious control. We'll discover that there are significant variations in how impulses are transmitted, but for now it's sufficient to remember these key features. This provides a broad overview of the nervous system, which is profoundly intricate and remains largely unexplored. Its efficacy relies on the cooperation of all its components. Should any part of this intricately designed system malfunction, the consequences could be profound. That's why it's crucial to understand its workings. Over time, we'll learn more about it.
Thank you for watching. This video was created by School of Biomedical Sciences, Agora. We hope you enjoyed it. If you're curious or have any doubt or question, please feel free to leave a comment below. If you want to find out more about us or want to support our project, click on the following link to visit our website.